What they do here. First and goal.
There we go.
Rodgers hangs in the pocket, throwing into a lot of traffic, and it's caught for the touchdown.
And as always, you can follow us on Twitter at First and Goal Pod. Follow the guys. Jay is at UPJ33. Dave is at Steak and Cheese. And the fantasy wonder man himself, Dillon, is at DillonBusby1. Email all your questions and comments to us at firstandgoalpodcast@yahoo.com, and you will make the show live during our mailbag segment. Again, that's firstandgoalpodcast@yahoo.com.
Don't turn your back on the wolf pack. Don't turn your back on the wolf pack. 3, 2, 1.
And welcome everybody to another live edition of First and Goal with me, your founder and producer, Jay Andrews in the UP. And as always, your host with the most down in Georgia, it's Dave.
Merry Christmas and happy holidays, First and Goalers. What is going on? Back to December football. I know I'm loving it. I know Jay's loving it. I know Dillon's loving it, especially if he'd get his butt on here. But you know what? I am just happy that December football is finally upon us. Because usually December football is Packer football.
Well, and like, since we're killing some time here for just a second, getting started, I want to ask you, why is it that everybody seems to think that there is no possibility that it's such a pipe dream for the Packers them to have the number one seed?
Because everyone thinks that just because we lost to San Fran, they think that we can't get number one. And Jay, I'm right there with you. I think they can get number one because we talked about it last night. It's cannibalism. The other NFC teams are going to eat each other away. And I had an argument on Twitter today with of course, Dave has an argument on Twitter. What do you know? With a guy that tried to go out and say, well, yeah, we should be backing the 49ers in this to beat the Saints this weekend. I'm like, no, we should be backing the Saints to beat the 49ers because the 49ers don't have a rough schedule after the Saints. They only have the Seattle at the last week. Other than that, they have the Falcons and another low-end game in the Rams. And honestly, they're going to go 2-1 in that stretch. And if they lose to Seattle, that's 2-2. Guess what, folks? That's 12-4. And then you go over to New Orleans. They got the Colts. They got Tennessee. They got the Rams. And then they end up facing Carolina. They have a tough stretch because those are all teams vying for playoff spots, including Carolina. You never know. They could make a run at the last end. Just Rivera firing could fire them up, which I'm going to get to that in a second. And then you have Seattle that's going to battle it out with the 49ers. Honestly, they'd probably get the 2 seed because we have a better conference record than them. That I don't get it. Why it doesn't make sense.
My point
we have
is
the schedule to do it.
My point is, and my argument is, and it's kind of just reiterating what you're saying, but it's the path to the 1 seed this year is 13 wins.
Yes.
And I think the easiest path to 13 wins out of the 4 teams that have the best shot at doing it, the Packers have the easiest chance, the best chance. Yep. They have the easiest road there. So, I don't understand the whole pipe dream thing. Yes, other teams have to lose.
People want to settle for a number 2 or 3 seed. That's what they want, Jay. They want to settle for it.
You'll have to excuse me. I have really bad gas tonight, and it's coming out burp-wise. Burp-wise. It's just,
smells like Canadian bacon over here.
Ugh.
There's Dillon. There's
guys?
that beautiful face that I've been looking for.
It's Tuesday. All right, Dave. It is time for, since we got to do news updates.
News updates. Well, let's start out with the biggie. How about Ron Rivera? Canned, gone. You're fired.
Sent down the river
Man,
on his riverboat.
you know what, though? I am so shocked at this because Packers, I mean, everyone was shocked that they fired McCarthy last year after the Cardinals loss. But think about it. This is even worse for the Panthers because he had a backup QB. He was trying to manage that the whole way. He was trying to manage with injuries. I mean, and then his run defense was a revolving turnstile in New York City subway. He couldn't stop a running back to save his life, so he was managing 3 or 4 different major issues here. And for the most part, he was doing it. They actually dropped 4 games recently, but for the most part, he was doing a decent job in my opinion. Carolina is still mathematically not out of the playoffs. That's why I don't get this firing. Like, he's not out of it.
Was it over for Ron the moment that Darius Geis literally shoved Shaq Thompson all the way down to hell, or was it after that?
It was probably when Dwayne Haskins went and took another selfie with another fan. No, it's just
What a stiff arm. I mean, talk about a highlight for Geis.
I'm trying to give sympathy to Ron, and you're like, what a stiff arm over here.
Well, come on. I mean, that can't go unsaid in that game.
We'll get to some stiff arms. Hold on for that. But all I'm just saying is I think Panthers pulled the trigger a little too early here to try and find a new coach for next year. I think they're doing what the Packers did last year because they got an early start on kind of skimming away candidates they didn't want and who they wanted as candidates for their coaching team. And they already had them lined up after the year. So that's what I think they're doing.
So on Ron, if you had to put your money on one or the other, do you think his next job is going to be as a head coach or as a defensive coordinator?
It's a head coach. It's a head coach. He's got
Okay.
too big of a resume not to be a head coach on his next job. The only reason if he does do a defensive coordinator, Dillon, is because he chooses to.
Yeah, that's fair. Do you got any teams in mind?
I think he should wait out Cleveland because Cleveland has talent on that defense. If they get a couple more pieces, I'm telling you, Rivera would be a good piece for it. You bring in an offensive coordinator that he wants to run his offense with Baker Mayfield, or let Baker talk to him and see who he wants as an OC.
What about on Carolina's side of it? Do you got any names in mind you think they're going to go with for head coach?
I actually have a deep connection on this. Dave Tepper, the owner for Carolina, grew up with Mike McCarthy in the same hometown, and they know each other outside of football. So don't be surprised if you see McCarthy's in the running for a head coach spot in Carolina.
Mike
Shout out
McCarthy will never go there if he's got to coach Cam Newton. And he's not going there.
How do you know?
He's going to Cleveland. Because Cam Newton, you think
Well,
he's going from
They
Aaron
can still move on
Rodgers.
from Cam.
They're not moving on from Cam. Do you know why they're not going to move on from Cam? Because he'd be stupid. He's a very good athlete. They've already pretty much built and drafted an offense and offensive weapons to go around him, and he's only $19 million, dude. Like there's lots of reasons why you don't move on from Cam. Because you'd have to like really set fire to your entire offense.
All I'm saying is there's connections there to McCarthy because of the deep Pittsburgh roots.
Not as much as there
Tepper
is to
and
Cleveland.
I think the whole
John Dorsey's there, but there's also Green Bay ex-GMs all over the place. So
the whole Carolina organization definitely downplayed how injured Cam was between his foot, between his shoulder. I think he definitely needs this time to rehab and get back to form. And, if he doesn't perform next season, then so be it. You turn to Kyle Allen again, and hopefully you drafted someone in the later rounds that you can develop and might step in like a Gardner Minshew. Obviously that'd be best case scenario for Carolina. But at this point, I do think you got to hang on to him. The contract is actually pretty good. If you, obviously for the right price, you can trade just about anyone. But at this point, I think he's worth hanging on to for Carolina.
I just think Ron Rivera is too good of a coach not to have a head coaching position.
And I don't think he's going to be a head coach again this year. I think he'll take a year off.
You mean going into next season?
Yes.
Well, so do you think his next job is going to be as a head coach or defensive coordinator?
Probably defensive coordinator. Because honestly, outside of that anomaly 2015 year, where's his really good season? Where's his consistent playoff years? Where's his consistent divisional titles?
You can't exclude the anomaly. 15 was his good year.
That's 1 year. He's been there since 11.
You said,
that's
where's his
8
one
years.
good year?
I said, other than that
year.
one good year, where's
He did
the
say other than that, D, to be fair.
Like, a good head coach doesn't just have one good year.
Overruled.
Just like we don't say one good season makes a Hall of Fame quarterback. It's like yeah, I mean,
Eric Mangini.
Ron's a player's coach. He's a player's coach, but when has he really ever gotten the maximum out of his roster constantly? Like, they're up and down 1 year.
Yeah.
And it was an
North
anomaly
Turner.
year where they had they had Gene Chizik, I believe it was, as the offensive coordinator, who made Ted Ginn Jr. into damn near an all-pro receiver that year. Ted Ginn Jr., that was not Ron Rivera. He's a defensive coordinator. That was the offense that did that. The defense got to, was pretty damn good, but they were putting up tons of points and eating up yardage.
You can argue the defense was the strength of the team when they were really successful between Kuechly's run and some linemen that they had, Peanut Tillman. So Ron definitely did his part, but, when you phase out, you phase out. It's just the way it is in the NFL. You have a hot run. The best of the best get, more than 5 years, and other guys, it's like a turnstile anymore. You just got to see who's hot and who's not.
A big message from Cam Newton on Mr. Rivera. Per Cam, he said, "We'll be forever grateful because of the impact you had on my life. Thank you for giving me an opportunity. Thank you for believing in me. I can go on, but most importantly, thank you for allowing me to be me."
Here's a name I'll throw out there real quick for head coach, and that was pretty touching. Matt Rule, I believe his name is,
yes.
The Baylor head coach, is someone who's turned around several programs now, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tepper decides to go with him as someone who is popular amongst football fans and definitely could sell tickets if he gets hired there.
And that's another direction I put on Twitter earlier was everybody's doing the young coach, and Rivera's more of an old dog, and
yep.
And I can see Carolina going young. They want to mesh with, especially because you see it with LaFleur and Rodgers, and you see Shanahan with Garoppolo. These young coaches are meshing with more veteran QBs. Cam's a veteran QB. If they get a young coach, they can do it.
Yeah, it seems that way. That's what I would do if I had a veteran QB is get a guy in there who's not going to
Lincoln Riley? Look what he's doing for Jalen Hurts.
Oh, exactly. Not just Jalen Hurts, but Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray. Yeah.
I was just pointing out the type of player that Cam is and Jalen is. They both got that big, tall build, and I mean, they both can run the ball, but they also like to sling it when they can. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they took a flyer on him whenever. I'm not exactly sure with Jalen Hurts. When Oklahoma was hot at the beginning of the season, He was being mock drafted in the first round, and now it's like I'm not sure where he falls. So
second and third is where I'm seeing him now.
Okay.
And Kansas State Wildcats, thank you to that.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how these college football playoffs shake out.
Utah Utes, baby. Put them at 4. Get Georgia out of there. They're not even worth it. That's all I'm going to say on that. But
Go Tigers.
Hey, you know what? I love the fact that LSU is in there and Bama's out and they're done and Auburn won. Amazing. More news on the NFL. Titans claimed Tremaine Brock. He was more of a higher-rated corner on PFF, and he is probably replacing Malcolm Butler. So it's kind of a plug-and-play corner they can go right in and have there so Butler can get healthy. Also, too, Zach Zenner and Trevor Davis, both claimed by the Dolphins. So adding a little bit more talent here and there.
I like that. As far as Tremaine Brock goes, I mean, coming from Arizona where they definitely could use any and everybody to throw out there in the secondary, the year that they've had, it's been atrocious. To know that they